introduction. I am Ian, and this is Kristen, and we're the co-founders of SolSeed Retreats. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This is our third installment of a SolSeed Happy Hour, where we are attempting to keep community discussion alive around international retreats so that when things are conducive to leading a lot of international retreats again, we'll have a strong community of people to sort of tap and discuss with and try to come up with best practices about what is certainly going to be uncertain times and more questions and answers, that sort of idea. So that's why we started SolSeed Retreats, or that's why we started the Happy Hours. Today we are very happy to be joined by Jen Corley, who we've been working with for a few different years now via our relationship with WeTravel, which is a software package that we use to manage much of the back end, from payment collection to retreat participant details when we're running our retreats. So I'm going to attempt to put Jen up here as the pinned person for everyone to see. I don't know if that works, or maybe I can just click on Jen and see her. Maybe? I don't know.
I think she's already pinned.
Okay. Well, hopefully everyone can see Jen because she's going to introduce herself now.
Yes. Hi. Let me know if you can see me. Give me a wave. Yeah? Okay, cool.
Yay.
Yeah, so I've been at WeTravel for a little over 4 years now. We're a payments and registrations platform for group travel. We work in a few different segments, but I head up the wellness travel part of our business. I was formerly a full-time yoga teacher before coming into this role, and I do a lot of content marketing and working with our clients to help them grow their businesses and figure out kind of best practices around all of the things many things that go into retreats. So we as a company, when this whole crisis hit, decided we sit in a really good place with all of these different travel and retreat clients all around the world to kind of take the pulse of what's happening. So we actually did a 500 plus respondent survey. I'm going to show you just kind of the part that's relevant to the wellness world in the slides that are going to come up. But that was done in April, and so the results reflect kind of the end of April thinking. So I'll go through, if there's something that I think has changed a little bit since then, I'll note it. But maybe we could put the slides up.
Absolutely. With any luck.
Yes, we'll see.
Any luck, we will get the slides up. All right, so we're gonna go and share our screen. Just share screen.
Yep.
Magnificent.
Share.
And then, of course, present.
All right.
Is that looking good?
Yes, that's looking great. Hold on, I'm just going to one on my side so I don't have full screen. Okay, cool. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we'll go on, Ian, if you don't mind, to the who did we serve.
We're on that right now.
Oh, we are. Okay. Maybe there's just a lag. Let me make sure.
Wait.
Hold on. Yeah, I'm having.
Now.
Oh.
No, that's not what we want either.
Yeah, okay, now it's up. No, actually, we're one too far. So if we can go to slide 2.
Yes, there we go.
Slide 2.
There you go.
Survey.
Perfect. Yes. So as I mentioned, this was a big survey. For the wellness segment, it was like 132 different businesses. It's everybody from individual yoga teachers and retreat leaders who just do this as part of what they do for part of the year, to companies, studios, companies like SolSeed that really do this kind of all year long serial retreats. Even some retreat centers are our clients. So it's got well representative of a lot of different stakeholders, and they're offering mostly domestic and international retreats, but also some local and destination-based trainings as well. And you can just see it's a lot of small businesses, and it's a pretty good mix of brand new people to the industry and people that have been in it a long time. And the fortunate or unfortunate thing about that is that this has really hit everybody pretty significantly, no matter how much experience or foresight they might have had. Nobody really could have predicted what was going to happen these last few months. Go on to next slide, please. Awesome. So just kind of in that April timeframe, looking at a snapshot of like, gee, how much has just been flat out canceled versus how much has been rescheduled? You can see that about half of people canceled half or more as of that April time. I think when we were sitting there, not that we have a great deal more clarity at the moment of terms of when this is all going to return to normalcy, but I think people were responsible and proactive in trying to make sure that if cancellation was the right thing to do, they went ahead and did it, and made sure that they did right by everybody that's their students and their partners in terms of retreat centers and other vendors. And for a lot of people, canceling straight away was a good way to handle it. What we've seen, if you look at the right side, it's like see quite a bit of that in blue, which is not a lot of reschedulings, and that actually doesn't mean that things weren't being rescheduled. It was just at this point in time, it was too early for people to really have any kind of pulse on when they might be able to reschedule. So we've seen in the weeks that have ensued that people are rescheduling things, and we'll take a look at just kind of when people are looking into the future to reschedule on the next slide. Yeah, actually, it'll be the slide after that. But the first thing I want to talk about is just kind of how did people that were reading retreats go about handling doing refunds. So 48% managed to give full refunds, or refunds kind of minus a small administrative fee to their participants. And I had a really nice quote from one of our retreat leaders I'll read that kind of sums up, I think, how a lot of people that were handling things responsibly were thinking about this. She said, "It's important to be in touch with your clients and reassure them, even if you don't have all the answers. While I have standard terms and conditions, when something like this happens, I also try to handle each guest on a case-by-case basis. This is an unprecedented time, and I think the most important thing we can do is communicate clearly and consistently to instill confidence in my guests for the future." Yeah, and then kind of, as you can see, it pretty much maps one-to-one. If people were generous in refunds, or proactive in communicating well around, we're going to give you a credit and here's what what it's going to entail. Most people were happy with that, or happy with rescheduling. Some people not happy or not sure, but again, that's where that communication piece kind of comes in so importantly. I think next slide. Yeah, so getting to what I was thinking back to on the slide before last, just like, okay, so we're in this moment of hitting pause. Where do we go from here? So this is sort of like, okay, once we've had a little bit of time to think and reflect, people have really favored, fall 2021 and beyond. So 68% of the respondents to this wellness survey plan to reschedule their planned offerings to October 2020 and beyond. And if you look at along the right-hand side, really like kind of into the first half of 2021 and even the second half of 2021, that's when a tremendous amount of reschedulings are going to take place. And I think this is, we'll get to it in a minute, but I think this is a reflection on people see the ability to maybe at least congregate in groups and travel a little bit as soon as the fall, but that might not mean like a destination retreat that requires like 3 layovers and really really underdeveloped economy where if people did get sick it would be extra scary. So I think it depends on kind of the flavor. And I think the other reason we're seeing a lot of this push into 2021 is that if you had seasonal destination, like if you had a situation where your destination had a high season and a low season, moving it just like a full year on gives enough buffer of time that you can be pretty sure hopefully the world will be back to normal, but you'll still hopefully be in that season that you were targeting in 2020. Also, just a note on the graph on the right-hand side, generally, I would say that retreat centers and logistics service providers and kind of the other like people that go into making this all happen, there's generally been a sense of, hey, we're all in this together and we're going to have to figure out a way forward that is going to hopefully make all stakeholders, their businesses can sustain into the future. So generally, we've heard cases of people having really tough times with their vendors, but I would say generally negotiations are ongoing or settlements have already come to fruition. And again, it's kind of in that spirit of let's all help the industry come back together. And we realized we need to work together a little bit on the side of the retreat participants, the retreat leaders, and or host companies that are managing things, and also the in destination service providers, because we all need each other to keep doing this. Can we do the next slide, please? Awesome. So what does the future hold? This is like the $1 million question, unfortunately, because it's it's a virus. It's not totally sure when that's going to resolve and when global travel restrictions as a result are going to be lifted. But people's best guess as of the time of this study was that 63% of people thought that the industry would recover in their home countries within 12 months. So I think there's still some degree of uncertainty about this, but I think Kristen and Ian and I were talking just before everybody hopped on the call, and I think a lot of the kind of recovery is going to come in waves where people maybe are going to feel more comfortable with smaller groups, settings that are quite remote and allow plenty of distancing and allow people to take their cars or other non-public transport methods of getting there. And also just kind of the orientation around how food is served and how much contact with other people is included. I think those are going to be all factors in terms of like when people feel comfortable both being hosts and being participants on retreats as it does come back. Next slide, please. So I thought this one was interesting because I actually think it paints a picture that's a little different than we're going to see the reality come out. I think this was in April, everyone was really, really focused on, okay, what can I do right now? And so the spike in online programming, just because so many teachers and fitness professionals, wellness professionals rely on, one-to-one interaction to make their livings, it's been such a blessing to have things go online. But I think if you look at this really long bar that says, I will offer more online programming, I think that will be the case. But I think I was also sharing with Kristen and Ian that I think there's going to be some rebound in people's, especially on kind of the demand side from people that would be participants and would be travelers, where they're stuck inside their homes and their immediate neighborhoods and kind of just, really the stay-at-home mentality, which most people have been great in adhering to. But at some point, I can definitely speak for myself when I say my wanderlust is really creeping up, and I'd love to get out and, see at least more than my immediate surroundings. So personally, even though I'm, involved in and have a vested interest in travel coming back as an industry, I think that psychologically it's going to be eventually an important part of kind of our recovery and emergence from this whole, psychological experience we've just had. So yeah, that's my take on it. I think, of course, like some of the best practices around sanitizing surfaces and contactless payments and, not huge groups necessarily right away and all the things. I think there'll be some changes, but I think the future generally looks, fairly bright. And to that end, I wanted to share one more quote before we wrap up. And this one is from a client who's been with us a long time and is super seasoned retreat leader. And she said, "I don't think this will be the end of the travel business by any means, only the beginning of a new way of doing things. I'm still figuring things out, but I'm hopeful that, like a slingshot, the more things retract, the greater forward movement will follow." So I thought that was really well put. We definitely taking a bit of a clobbering at the intersection of wellness and travel these last few weeks and months, but I think we're poised. We've learned a lot of lessons. We're going to be better prepared on a lot of fronts in the future for managing any other crisis situations. And I don't think people's inherent desire to travel and see the world and take care of their bodies, minds, and spirits, none of that has changed. In fact, we may have a greater need for that going forward. So I wanted to wrap up that, so I'm not just talking the whole time, but give you a quick glimpse. If you're interested in the study more broadly, here's the link to the full study. there's a whole bunch of super inspirational quotes that our clients, thank you, that our clients gave us at that link below. And I know it's also a little bit late in the game for government loans, but we have some tips on that. And I actually heard just 3 days ago, a Duke professor at Fuqua School of Business at Duke came out in a webinar saying, like, it's not too late. There are still funds available. And with the caveat, you might need to look beyond just the bank down the street that you've been doing business with forever and find a loan provider that's actually expert in these PPP loans. But we actually have on our website, there's a partner Cabbage that you can apply through them, and they're great at what they do. So in case anybody's super late to the game there, I thought I wanted to mention it's not too late necessarily. Yeah, and then there's a link to our blog. And I'd love to just open the rest of the time that we have together, maybe turn off the slides or keep them on in case anybody wants to refer back to them, but open it up to general discussion. If you have any questions or thoughts after hearing my little spiel, I'd love to hear from you guys.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. And we will share the slides and links and all of that stuff.
Awesome, thank you.
You didn't write that down.
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely like to open the floor up.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's definitely, I was thinking about it. That's why I emailed you today, Kristen. I'm, about the Morocco retreat.
Freeze up.
A little frozen.
Little frozen. Gotta love the Zoom. Cool. Well, hopefully she can come back.
I know.
Anika, you're frozen. Oh,
There's Jessie. She's back.
Jessie.
yeah.
Sorry, I was chopping vegetables and I didn't want you guys to have to watch me chop my
Okay.
No problem.
So Jess, I know you said you run a bunch of stuff. What are your thoughts on when you're going to start getting retreats back out there? Have you had to postpone a lot, or?
Yeah, I've been pretty optimistic through everything, maybe too optimistic. So I was in Bali, had to cancel that one. Like I was already on the ground there and had 27 clients on the way, like in a couple days. I didn't just cancel it though, I postponed it. So I was able to rebook everything for March of 2021. And then I had Santorini in June, which I also postponed to June 2021. And then, so I haven't canceled anything. And I do have some coming up in the fall that I'm getting nervous about, but also just remaining very optimistic about. One is in Lake Powell in Arizona, and I really think we'll be able to run that. I think that my clients will be ready to do domestic travel then. I have no idea what might happen with another surge in, coronavirus cases. So that's the thing, that there's so much out of our control. But I do feel like I just had the final payment for that one due last week, and every single person of 22 people paid their remaining $1,000 like without asking any questions. So I think they want to go, which was good to see. Then I have Kenya in November, and that one is, a little bit of a different story because it is so far away and everybody was doing layovers in Qatar or Dubai. And so that one, I don't know what to do with yet. I haven't done my final payments to the retreat centers and the accommodation and safaris and everything. So I'm sort of waiting, I think until July will be the point where I either, move forward or decide to postpone it or cancel it. But I've been really surprised. So just this week, so my Bali one that I rescheduled for 2021, I had some people sign up to be on the wait list for that. Like I do see people wanting to think about traveling again. Even Lake Powell, I now have a wait list for that because I have clients that want to come. I have a Cuba retreat in February of next year, and I'm still having people register for that. So I feel like I have reason to be optimistic, but there's still like this little voice inside my head that's like, are you crazy for trying to keep doing this? Like, should you just be putting a pause on everything? I've also been thinking a lot about doing more closer to home, like this summer, even like one day retreat style things where we go to a really beautiful location on the water. We have yoga. I have a chef come in and prepare a nice meal. We do all different programming, and it's like what you would experience on my retreats, but just in a 1 day, like an hour or two drive away. We also have a campsite that I've got reserved for September, where we're going to do like a bring your own tent, bring your own food, like everybody bring everything they need sort of retreat. So yeah, I've been just looking at all different options, but like I said, like feeling hopeful since people do seem to want to keep booking things.
That's good.
That's awesome.
Sounds like you're doing the right things anyways, getting prepared, putting yourself in a good position.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's the connection as well. Like I did a bunch of virtual retreats. As soon as I got back from Bali, I started those, and like it's just keeping the engagement with your community that's so key. And I know my clients, like they just want to feel like they're part of that. I call them the Floyo family, and it's like they want to feel like they're part of that community. So that's been really important over these last 2 months.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome.
Very cool. So Anika, you got cut off.
Yeah, you froze.
I don't know what happened. It cut me out. My computer just cut me out. Anyway,
But you're
yeah,
back.
I'm back. I guess I was just thinking that a lot of people that might have been interested, a lot of stuff got pushed into the spring or, to next year. So it's almost like I feel like things that were going to happen next year maybe now need to be 2 years out, or I don't know. It's a little bit tricky, and I'm obviously I feel like you guys are the experts. This is your business. So, and you probably hear what people are saying. Like it just made me hopeful to hear Jessie say that she had people paying their final payments. When was that for Jessie?
That's for September, the end of September.
And that's domestic retreat, right?
That's
like
domestic.
conceivably you could drive to it, depending on where you're from.
Where is it? Where is it?
It's in Lake Powell, and pretty much all the clients are from Maryland. So we'll just be flying like a direct Southwest flight to Phoenix and then getting a rental car and driving to Lake
And
Powell.
is it a small group?
It's 22, I believe, with the wait list. So there's still, people that want to join, and all the people that are on it haven't mentioned anything about wanting to drop out.
Yeah.
That's great.
What are the accommodations in terms of single, double, triple, quad?
Yeah, that's something I'm worried about. So we have 2 massive houses, but pretty much everyone is sharing a room. A few people bought singles, so they have their own like king room. But yeah, everybody will be sharing like a bunk bed or 2 beds in a room.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if like, I don't know, I guess we'll see how testing goes, but I was sort of thinking, come September, if there's tests more available, like do I make it a requirement that everybody coming on the retreat has to a test?
Yeah.
And what is your, like, how old are your average people, age demographics?
It's such a range. I'd say typically like 30 to 50.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we have a broad, we do, in a good, this year we would have done about 40 retreats without COVID. And that's ranging from 25 to 35-year-old groups coming out of South Boston, traveling relatively budget and really no concerns in the world, up to median age 60, maybe and change. A lot of sort of like the country club sect, and a higher age and higher income demographic. And we're seeing sort of different reactions to it. I would be curious to see how regional demographics work as well. In SolSeed, we don't market the trips on anyone's behalf. So if you're a New York City based teacher, all your customers are coming from your community in New York City, or people that have left and moved to California or whatever and coming to see, but still it's going to be a New York City demographic. It would be interesting to see if our Northeast customers rebound a little slower than the people in parts of the country that weren't so heavily affected as of yet, hopefully never, and what that impact is. And then I guess we're also like really just waiting on the airlines to see what our airports and airlines and protocols going to be. Testing going to be really big. I don't know, that's sort of where we are. We haven't started, like we would generally be in the midst of, or actually towards the end of our spring 2021 sales cycle right now. And, you know, the next step on everybody's part would be to enter into their early bird pricing and start to push the first round of sales and whatnot. And we've held back mostly because, and I'm sure Anika can speak to this too, like it just doesn't feel like the right time to start being like, hey, everybody, let's do it. And that's an interesting point that you brought up, Anika, as well, is that everybody's plans for the spring are now their plans for next spring. So how is that going to factor in with calendars filling up quickly and, you know, whatnot? We sort of see it a couple of different ways on if we want to be really positive about it from our specific sort of spot in the industry. We can help people turn on retreats in 6 different countries. As long as they can bring the community, we can get pricing and marketing strategies in place, sign up pages in place, all the vendors and everything in 2 weeks. You know, like in a week, we could have them up and ready to run with spots guaranteed, deposits placed, all that stuff. So maybe in a good world in September, there's no additional spike. There's really low cases. There's a prophylactic treatment course. No one's really concerned anymore. And be like, great, we can actually do spring retreats 3 months down the road because we have the logistics handled. But then on the other side of that is like, if the airlines are going to need to seriously retool and the airports are going to need to seriously retool, that won't be in place in the fall. It's going to be just like physical, like stuff needs to occur that takes time to occur, like building terminals, you know? So we'll see where all that sort of falls out. And then the other critical service providers, like we're keeping a really close pulse on. I mean, I'm sure that Jesse, you've interviewed dozens, if not more, retreat centers around the world. Some are established and can weather this, many won't. And so there's going to be that like sort of opening in the market where a bunch of people just evaporate. And then, you know, will the demand outstrip the supply of retreat centers for a year or two? I don't know.
Yeah, or management changing hands, you know, not being sure that you're getting kind of the same level of service because, you know,
right.
A lot of retreat centers may be open in name, but, you know, look totally different than they did.
I've already had like mild anxiety sessions about like the chefs, like owners of the resorts stick it out. Lots of chefs are going home.
Yeah.
And then I have to redo meal programs, which is so tedious. But you know, we're just gonna have to see. We're gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah.
One other really logistic thing is just I've got family that works in the airline industries, including brother-in-law who's a pilot, and he's still flying around all the time. And he said, you know, I wouldn't be too afraid to get on a plane these days. I feel pretty good, and they're continuing to ramp up kind of safety protocol, cleaning, requiring masks, all this different stuff. But the actual airports themselves are really like almost shuttered, and so he says anytime he has to have a layover, he has to literally pack food for as long as he needs to get around the world. So that's just another thing. That's one more reason that anything that takes more than a direct flight, it definitely adds a level of complication.
Jesse, were you going to say something? I have a point to add on to that, but.
Yeah, well, I just had a question. So we were talking about like the places we have booked. So one of my big concerns is both my Bali retreat and my Santorini one, which I rescheduled for next year. Like I make a point to work with all really small, locally owned people, whether they own a little bed and breakfast or my bike tour or culinary experience person. Like it's very small family run businesses. And I had paid, especially for Bali, everything 100%. And they were all nice enough to say, sure, you can push it to next year. But I'm just like, what are the chances that these people are still going to be in business?
Right.
And I guess there's nothing I can really do about that. But I didn't know if you guys have any ideas.
We're in a very similar boat.
Yeah, because we had, you know, somewhere in the order of 240 or so travelers going out this spring. And that ranged from people who had been paid for in full to people who had, I mean, it's not their business, they don't know, but had not been paid much for at all. We made the decision to just share that burden across absolutely everybody, which lowered the burden to a very palatable level. And we're honoring all that as travel credits for a year. But we are also in a position where we can't drive those vendors out of business. They're more important to us in a lot of ways than 20 angry people. You know, like our business depends on this network of suppliers, and they are small mom and pops as well. So there was absolutely no chance to get money back from them. It was in bank accounts in Morocco and Portugal and all over Guatemala. Like there's no extra, you know, country jurisdiction. That money's not coming back. Like it just is what it is. So we're taking the risk that we're honoring it as travel credits moving forward, and we'll see what happens. Like I understand that not 100% of those travel credits are going to be reclaimed. So if I lose a vendor or two, I'm hoping that I'll lose a certain number of travelers that never claim the credit, and then we're all sort of in the same place. But it brings up a lot of other questions too. Like that could force our hand in when we do start to resell again, so that I can infuse money into people that I do need to be in business. And it's going to be, I don't know, nobody knows, right? But
I think it's hard to really, like I was going to say, it would be obviously great information. Like Jen, obviously you did a survey in April, but that was like
2 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
was that 2 years ago.
No. It was just,
I know it feels like 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like, yeah, it feels like 2 years ago. That's what I was going to say. So like so much happens, and week by week, everything changes. So, you know, you need new data, I feel like, every month to really measure where people are at. You know, I think a lot of people are thinking that, and of course they're thinking this because it's what all the news is saying, but that there's going to be another spike in October. So how do people say, yes, I would fly in March, you know, like the Morocco trip is in March. Yeah, I would fly in March. For me to be able to, for me to ask people right now, it wouldn't be real data to go by, in my opinion. Like I was thinking, yeah, it would be great to survey my community and say, hey guys, if I keep the Morocco trip, would you go, you know, in March 2021, the response there needs to be 3, yes, no, or I don't know yet. Right. And I feel like everybody would be in that I don't know yet.
I agree. And I think it's tough to sell spring 2021 right now, given how up in the air things are.
So, and Anika, we could even take this conversation offline if we wanted to get deeper, but I think that we address it with terms and conditions, and we work with all of our vendors on the back end. And, you know, the people that are wanting to host us in March are very much interested in us keeping our business with them, but are also going to accept pushes. They will. That's their only option at this point. And we're still at such period in our agreement that's as long as they're in business and they're ethical, we're going to like get them the money back. It will be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see what retreat centers do. And I am certain that there's going to be, I can't be certain, who can be certain, but I'm pretty sure there's going to be a big push, a big swing towards no deposit bookings. And I don't think that that's going to be good necessarily. I think
no deposit bookings, meaning
retreat centers being like, just come, no money needs to see me yet at all. And we've done this enough to know that
that's not a good sign.
Not a good thing. You better know the retreat center really, really well. And they can't know the leader really, really well. That's impossible. They haven't done business with them. When there's existing relationship, third time coming back, sure. And they will do the waive the deposit then anyways a lot of the time. But that in the discussions we're having with our retreat centers, we're being like, guys, please don't follow that path. It's going to be tempting. It's going to feel like everyone's going to beat you with that, et cetera, et cetera. But trust me, if you do that for 10 retreats, you're going to get 2 that work, 3 that are terrible, and 5 that walk away. And your whole season is going to be terrible. So you can't just solve it that way. It won't be the case.
Oh, that's interesting. That's a good point.
So we're going to have to see. But for those that we're already booked with, so like we've done many retreats with your Morocco hosts, and they're like, at this point, we're actually kind of just all getting back together and be like, so does it even matter whose name was behind that money, or is this just our money to spend with you in the future, et cetera? We're kind of working all that stuff out. But I know that they would wait as long as we could wait. But we run into airline tickets, and what are they going to cost? And so if you can't decide in October if you can go in March, like, you do need to decide by like late January, or else your ticket's going to be $2,000. You're not going to go.
Yeah.
It's weird, but I think even your standard consumer, when planning to go to like a concert or whatever, is right now just not making choices and just wait and see.
Yeah.
And I think the service providers, us, are just going to have to be ready when the time comes to spring into action and be like, you're ready? Okay.
Yeah.
We can do it now, and we can have it ready for you in 2 months, which in the yoga retreat world is just absolutely unheard of in an international retreat.
Right.
But we're ready to do it. You guys are ready to do it. If your communities are ready to do it, then that'll be the like, boom. And I think that there will be low airline tickets for a stretch. So I think once it comes back, to be in that like 3 month to 4 month period, once it comes back, is going to be, you got to make hay when the sun shines during those 3 or 4 months, because who knows what the long-term ramifications of airfares and all that are going to be.
Yeah, I've heard the same from people I've talked to within the airline industries, and people that have had to emergency book tickets, like the prices are quite depressed. They're hurting a ton, won't be forever. But I think also people's pockets coming out of this, if they've been unemployed or whatever, being especially sensitive to like price diversification and payment plans. I know that you guys all, probably everybody on this call, is already thinking through those things, but making sure that financial commitment piece isn't the only thing, keeping somebody from coming.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's going to feel probably a little bit poorer at the end of this.
Yeah.
I had this 2 things. Oh geez, now I'm going to forget. Oh, I was going to just chime in and say that I do think that people are going to be so much more willing to book these last minute experiences and travel, just because they haven't been anywhere for so long. I just opened a separate business I have as a paddleboard school here in Baltimore, and our boards are like selling out quicker than ever because people are like, I just want to go somewhere. And normally people would book a Floyo class like a couple weeks in advance, and now they're just booking like that morning. Like they wake up like, I have nothing to do again today, like I want to go somewhere. So
No.
Yeah.
right. And then I had a question when you mentioned sort of adjusting the terms and conditions. So something I've been thinking too a lot about is just like my own policies. I've always sort of said that all of my each deposit that somebody pays is non-refundable, but obviously I'm going to have to change that with all the uncertainty. So is that the main thing you're referring to when you update your T's and C's? Like,
yeah. So what I'm thinking, and I haven't thought this all the way through, is a point for community discussion. On the one hand, like, you have to have it non-refundable, so that someone doesn't squat on a room type that someone else would have purchased and then not show up. Right. So managing the inventory of what you have to sell is going to get a little bit trickier. But if, for example, I had a March retreat right now, or you have your February retreat coming up in Cuba, if someone was like, look, I don't really know, I'm coming if I can come, but what can you do for me? Then I'd definitely be way more willing to be like, all right, I'm going to, give it to you fully refundable up to 90 days before, or something like that, which I would not have done previously by any means. But that requires the partner in Cuba to be more flexible as well, potentially, depending on what the terms there are. We also work really predominantly, if not exclusively, with mom and pop type spots. But there is kind of a grade, it's like one step above, that we've had a lot of success with, which would be like the boutique hotel that has maybe 40 rooms, maybe less, maybe 25 to 30 rooms. Those guys are going to be much more inclined to like let you hold a small block and be really loose with exchanges, which would help you be loose with your terms. So it might change a little bit who we're working with for a little bit here as well. But I don't like all this. Just states, because our job is to get the people registered and make sure they understand what they're doing and collect their money and return it if they need it and whatnot. So we're going to end up like us doing all the work for people that then cancel. And it's hours of time that goes, it's answering a bunch of questions, it's sending FAQs, it's gathering dietary restrictions, and then being like, I don't really feel like it. We would, fall back to a service fee for all of that. But in this world, it's going to be just lost time. And we were sort of talking about that a few happy hours ago when we were talking about cancellations and postponements and what to do, and how as the leaders, as the ones that profit when times are good, we sort of are accepting the fact that we're going to have to work twice as hard during this spell until things are back. We're going to spend at least twice as much time with travelers that may never even come. And that's just going to be part of the deal. Or, our hourly earnings, we don't look at our life that way, but if we did, they're dropping right now. But I mean, it's not the end of the world. It just feels like it every now and again.
Well, I guess everybody in the retreat/event world is feeling the same way. I mean, they're not making money until the tickets get sold, right? So.
Right, and then all the service providers on the back end are where they would.
Oh, the Seacrest, for instance, the hotel that I do the festival at. I mean, they've got all their events and weddings canceled this year. I'm hoping they can even stay afloat, stay open. So same thing. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, crazy.
Jen, I was wondering if from WeTravel, like, are any retreat leaders like putting up new retreats that are domestic or are closer to home? Like, have you seen many people creating experiences, or is it just like no one is creating anything new?
No, well, at first we had a slew of, we had this, local or domestic retreat. We switched it to virtual. So there was that first wave, of course. And then in the last 2 weeks or so, I would say that there has been like definitely an uptick, and they are, like you say, new events that are domestic, that are smaller groups, that are short, they're a long weekend instead of being 10 days. They tend to be in kind of like, semi or rural nature, they're not in the middle of a city, not that retreats normally are, but they're all set up in a way that I think these are retreat leaders that know their communities, and they've figured out what they think, in X months their community is going to be comfortable doing, and then kind of calibrated around that. So definitely we're seeing for 2021, the first half of the year, we see a lot of these 1 year on reboots. So that's why we see quite a good activity for the first half of the year. And then the second half of the year, people are just, we're into mid 2020. It's time to start planning, just like you always would, a year plus out for an international retreat in the second half of 2021. So yeah, it is coming alive again. It's going to be a while probably before we see tons of transactions happening on, because I'm not sure people are going to like beat down the doors of the early bird for some of those. But yeah, life is coming back, and it definitely feels like each week that goes by, even though we don't know what's happening with the virus, that people are starting to want to put thought and effort back into this part of their, revenue stream and their business overall, as opposed to just, completely putting the brakes on like they were in the first 2 months or so.
Right.
That's good. That's positive.
Yeah.
So WeTravel for a virtual retreat, you're in charge of the tickets, or what?
Yeah, so we're a payment and registration platform. So that's where we also support trainings and occasionally festivals and anything that you need to basically have something on your website where people can decide, what it is that they want to buy in terms of packages, if they want to be on a payment plan, if you as a retreat organizer want to roll in questionnaire, waivers, that kind of thing. So it's that whole checkout process, and then they obviously pay either in part or full in installment, and then they're enrolled in our software system where you can manage the reservations, track things, pull down reports, and reminders to them. So that's kind of we're really just like the software and payments piece rather than any so we see it all come across our platform, but we don't actually like have a hand in creating it. That's like where our partners like SolSeed come in. They're the ones actually creating it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see like average retreat size in the next year versus last year.
That's a really great data point. I should keep my pulse on. That's good. I'm gonna write that down. But I bet it's gonna drop. Yeah, at least in the first
And
half.
location selection too. Are people going to go to Greece instead of Guatemala? And we'll have to see, because I don't know if they'll be more afraid to travel to.
Well, and they might, they might research, like Greece handled this whole thing so well that they kept their numbers low as far as how many deaths from this. So, so will they use that data to measure where they're going to be traveling to?
I question Morocco specifically for that, because I don't know if people will trust Morocco's reporting or their medical system.
Yeah, that's interesting too.
But they're like, is not a confirmed case in the small city that we host in. It's got 80,000.
Not a confirmed case.
80,000 occupants and no single COVID confirmed case. So,
yeah.
But they also, like with 3 confirmed cases in the country, close the borders strictly. Like people were stuck inside.
They took extreme measures.
So
that's what Greece did too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they kind of got on it.
Guatemala as well.
Guatemala as well.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of objections people are faced with.
Yeah.
We have blogs on our website about safety in Morocco, safety in Guatemala, safety in Colombia. Like, we write a safety blog for everywhere because people are always nervous. Now I think I'm going to have to write a whole bunch of like COVID history blogs, which should be interesting as well.
I know.
Well, case incidence is one thing, but then if I just think about it from my perspective, if I was traveling into a place that had very low incidence of case, but also had very, very poor quality healthcare, that's another consideration. And did I have to change planes and go through X number of public spaces in transit to get there? Because frankly, for me, that would be more scary than being out in the desert in Morocco once I know that I'm, fairly separated. So there's my point is, like, there's probably a few different threads to consider, and everybody psychologically, individually may have different fear points around like what feels most scary to them.
Right.
So.
And I'm really keeping an eye on it. I'm waiting for the insurance industry to do something.
Yeah.
Like, I think they are going to be one of the biggest players in getting people back on the road.
Yeah.
And we'll just see, like, can they come up with an affordable package that addresses pandemics, that allows people to, change or whatever out of just sheer comfort. Because if they can do that, then I think people will really jump back on board. Anika, you're dealing with now like an uncertainty in what is the government going to allow? What's Charlie Baker going to work?
Yeah.
And like, I would say your odds at big gatherings in September are slim to none. Like, just period, slim to none.
That's what I felt too.
And so it's not worth rolling the dice.
No.
But
too many factors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But once we're at a place where everyone in the U.S. is used to 50-person gatherings, that's kind of the norm. People aren't really worried about that. You're going on a retreat with 18 people. The country that you're going to, that's all copacetic. The airports are dealing with, et cetera, then the final
airlines, they're talking about not seating people in the middle seats and all that. So, right, you're right. Once that's all the guidelines have been set.
The final piece will be, do we have to take the burden of financial risk? Like, is the industry itself going to have to do that with terms and conditions and pricing? Because prices will have to go up if we have to bear more risk. Or will the insurance industry come in and say, here are some packages, the consumer can pay a reasonable amount and protect their investment. Hopefully they come through with that, because that'd be very helpful.
Where's the change maker in that industry? Like what happened there?
Warren Buffett owns a lot of insurance companies.
What was that?
I think Warren Buffett owns a lot of.
Yeah, call him.
Yeah.
What's going on? Anyhow, we want to be respectful of your time. We try to keep these about a half an hour, but this has been such a productive post conversation. We do truly appreciate all your guys' input. We'll email out the slides today. Those are soon. When we do, we will. And we will upload the presentation portion of this. We don't usually upload the chit chat afterwards, because it's just time consuming in YouTube, whatever. But we'll get that on YouTube as well. You can share it around or keep it for your reference. And we'll definitely make sure you have Jen's contact info if you don't already. I can't speak highly enough about WeTravel and about Jen and how helpful she's been in helping us grow our business. and supportive, frankly, WeTravel's been throughout all of this as well. So thank you, Jen. And any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us at any point.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Jesse.
Great to see you all.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Guys,
Take care, everybody.
hopefully
Take
we'll see
care.
you next
Bye, you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.